Henry David Thoreau was a writer, an essayist, an American naturalist, poet, and a philosopher. He grew up in Concord, Massachusetts, and wrote an essay on civil disobedience, which cemented him as a nonviolent protester. He refused to pay tax, which is going towards the Mexican-American War. He did not pay the tax because it was going towards a cause in which he thought was immoral. Refusing to pay the tax for the Mexican-American War, Henry spent a night in jail. Refusing to pay the tax as a peaceful protest inspired Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. Henry Thoreau was a transcendentalist alongside his friend Ralph Waldo Emerson. Henry Thoreau spent 2 years in the woods conducting a self-experiment because he believed that he used what he learned to find essential truths about life and the universe. He lived in a cabin in the woods for 2 years of the experiment and wrote a popular book at the time called The Walden. This book became very popular and made Henry a pioneer ecologist and conversationalist. Something a lot of people don't know about him is that he was an abolitionist too, and supported well-known abolitionists time period. An abolitionist is someone whose main goal is to abolish slavery, or in other words, just get rid of it. Most people don't know that because he's best known for his writings and about simple living essays in his book that he wrote. His education was at Harvard. He studied philosophy, science, mathematics, classics, and rhetoric, which rhetorics is the art of persuasion. But just like good old Henry is known for, he refused to pay the $5 fee, which is about $153 today, for his Harvard master's diploma. But this is in fact not true because there's no proof that happened, and it's just word of mouth and stories being told from one person to another. Some questions people might have about all this is, what criticisms of American society did the individual have? What methods did the person use to improve American life? What successes did the individual have in promoting reform? What details of the person's work made him or her an interesting historical figure? To what extent was the reformers obsessed with achieving an impractical goal through fanatical or impractical means? What lasting impact of the person's reform have on American society? And to answer these questions, he didn't like how what was happening in the United States was going against his morals, and thought about how there was things that he could do to essentially live simple. He wrote a book called The Walden, which reached and influenced a lot of Americans, which caused a bunch of people at the time period to make their own mini utopias in the middle of nowhere and forming small communities. But none of the communities lasted too long. We managed to get a lot of people to try to form their own little communities and utopias in the middle of the woods. All these failed because they followed communist ideas. His influence across a large portion of the United States from his book Walden. The book was about living simply and unlocking truths about life and the universe. It was also a book that ended up accidentally being partly about ecology. The idea of living alone in the woods, apart from society, and making utopias out of nothing that followed communist ideology wasn't very practical for the time period of the reformers starting. Because of the Second Enlightenment, there were religions that were seeping into America again. So the whole idea was just bizarre enough to reach attention, but was still very impractical. The lasting impact that Henry David Thoreau had was that he ended up pioneering ecology and the idea of writing about nature and the experience someone had when living in nature.